Have you ever looked in the mirror, truly looked, past the reflection and into the eyes of the man staring back at you, and asked a simple, terrifying question: are you in control? I don't mean control of your job, your finances, or your social life. I mean real control. The kind of control that dictates your actions when you are alone, in the dead of night, with nothing but the glow of a screen and the whispers of your own compulsions. Are you the master of your own mind, the captain of your own ship? Or are you a slave to an urge you barely understand, an urge that promises a moment of fleeting pleasure and leaves a wake of guilt, shame, and emptiness? For years, I couldn't answer that question honestly. For years, the man in the mirror was a stranger, a puppet pulled by strings I refused to see. This is not just another video about quitting a bad habit. This is a journey into the heart of masculine power. This is about reclaiming your life force, about transforming yourself from a boy chasing fleeting sensations into a man of diamond-like stability and unwavering purpose. This is the story of how I stopped being a slave to my desires and became the master of my destiny. And it's the blueprint for how you can do the same. My journey into this shadow world began when I was young, around 13 years old. The day I first discovered that solitary release, I felt like I had unlocked a secret cheat code to pleasure. It was, up to that point, the most intense physical experience of my life. And in that moment, a contract was signed. I didn't know it then, but I had just handed over the keys to my own mind to a relentless master. I was hooked, instantly. That first day, I did it 2 more times. In the days and weeks that followed, it became a ritual, a daily, sometimes twice or thrice daily, occurrence that would persist for about 3 years straight. When you're young, you're impressionable. You lack the right influences, the mentors to guide you. You hear whispers from the world, even from doctors, that it's healthy, a normal part of life, good for prostate health. So, I believed I was doing a good thing, a normal thing. I was completely oblivious to the fact that I was slowly, systematically, draining myself of my own life force. The wake-up call, the moment the illusion shattered, came when I was 16. It was my first real sexual encounter. The moment every young man anticipates with a mix of excitement and terror. I was with a girl, things were escalating, the scene was set. But there was a problem. A catastrophic failure. Down there, there was nothing. No life, no sensation, no activity. It simply wouldn't respond. 10 minutes of foreplay went by, and my mind was racing in a panic. Why isn't this working? It worked just fine last night, alone in my room with my hand and the pixels on the screen. Eventually, through sheer will and a desperate attempt to calm my racing mind, I managed to get to about 70%. But even then, there was zero sensation. It didn't feel good at all. I couldn't finish. I went home that night completely defeated, my head in my hands, asking myself what on earth had just happened. I knew I was straight, and I knew everything worked when I was alone. So why did it fail me with a real, living, breathing woman? Like any modern man facing a crisis, I turned to Google. I typed in the embarrassing, desperate question, why can I finish at home with my hand and not with a real woman? And that is when I discovered it. A community, a movement, a term I'd never heard before, NoFap. I found stories from thousands of other men, young men who should have been in their sexual prime, healthy and with high libidos, who had gone through the exact same humiliating experience. They were all suffering from something called porn-induced erectile dysfunction. The term hit me like a physical blow. That was it. That was me. At 16 years old, I had a condition I thought only affected old men. The trauma of that night was so profound that it fueled my first real attempt to break free. My first streak lasted 17 days. 17 days after 3 years of daily indulgence. And in those 17 days, I felt incredible. I felt a clarity and energy I hadn't realized I was missing. But there's a problem with long streaks when you're just white-knuckling it, when you haven't changed your fundamental identity. Your sensitivity returns with a vengeance. After 17 days, the sexual energy that had built up was immense. Any little bit of friction, any passing thought, could trigger a powerful urge. On that 17th day, I came home, and the urge was a roaring fire. I told myself I just had to release it. And the problem with releasing after a long period of abstinence is that the increased sensitivity makes the orgasm far more intense. And just like that, I was hooked again. The chains were back on, tighter than before. I fell back into the old patterns, but now with the added burden of knowing. I was trapped in a vicious cycle. I'd try to abstain for 2 days, then relapse. 3 days, relapse. 4 days, relapse. Each time, I'd reset my mental counter, filled with a fresh wave of shame, and start the cycle all over again. I had no idea why I kept failing. My dating life became a strategic nightmare. I developed a tactic. If I knew I was going to see a girl, I would force myself to abstain for a week beforehand, just to regain enough sensitivity to perform. But I was never at 100%. It always took too long, it never felt as good as it should have. Because I was still an addict. This is the insidious nature of this addiction. You train your mind, your very neurology, to get aroused by a specific, unnatural stimulus, pixels on a screen. You're watching hyper-stimulating, perfectly edited productions with professional models, perfect lighting, and dramatic angles. Your brain becomes conditioned to this level of intensity. Then you find yourself in real life. With a real person. And reality can't compete. There is no director, no background music, no exaggerated reactions. You're with a real woman, who has her own flaws and insecurities. She isn't a performer doing tricks, she's a human being. But you've trained your brain to be a passive observer, watching another man perform the act. So when you're suddenly thrust into the first-person role, you don't know what to do. Your expectations, shaped by fantasy, clash violently with reality, and you're left feeling underwhelmed and incompetent. Especially during your formative years, during puberty when your brain is at its most malleable, your only sexual education comes from this distorted source. It is a guaranteed recipe for dysfunction. If you are a young man, still addicted, who hasn't had this experience yet, let my story be a warning. I promise you, it is not going to go the way you think it will. It is actively destroying your ability to perform and connect with a real partner. But the damage goes far beyond the bedroom. It seeps into every corner of your life. It makes you socially awkward. Looking back, I genuinely believe my shyness as a teenager was directly linked to this habit. There is a profound amount of guilt and shame that comes with this act. After you've done it, you carry that low-grade feeling of self-disgust with you throughout your day. You go to the supermarket and you feel like everyone can just see it on you, like you're wearing a sign. Conversely, when you have abstained for a significant period, you walk with a different energy. There's a confidence, a certainty in your step. You know, deep in your core, that you are a man in control of his base impulses, not a boy enslaved by them. What I didn't understand back then, what took me years to grasp, is the profound nature of what I was wasting. The yogic cultures have a word for this substance, virya. It is a term that refers not just to the physical fluid, but to the essence of vitality itself. Virya is also linked to the word vitra, which means diamond, or stability. It implies something that is the hardest, most potent substance. In the human body, virya is considered to be like vitra. It is one of the most powerful things you possess, if you know how to use it. Think about it from a purely biological standpoint. Your body is a factory of cells. You have skin cells, hair cells, liver cells, all with their own purpose and potency. But semen is on another level entirely. It contains the potential to create a whole new life. It is the basis of our physical existence. Every single one of us is here because that was 50% of the ingredient. Now, science can do amazing things. They might be able to take an epithelial cell and clone a person in a laboratory. So the potential exists in other cells, but not with the same natural, dynamic power as it does in semen. Consider the energy your body invests. The amount of metabolic energy the body spends to produce epithelial cells versus the energy it spends to produce a single cell of semen is vastly different, and this can be scientifically established. Your body is investing a tremendous amount of its resources into creating this substance. It is, by its very nature, extraordinarily potent. And when you are spilling it thoughtlessly, you are quite literally draining your own battery. You are telling your brain, on a primal, biological level, that you are successfully procreating every single day. And if your brain thinks you're already winning the game of evolution, what incentive is there for it to push you to improve? Why would it signal the need to get stronger, smarter, or more disciplined? It thinks you've already passed on your seed, that your mission is accomplished. You are short-circuiting your own drive to become a better man. Everything in your body, every single aspect of your being, can be transformed into a higher function. Sadhguru gives a beautiful analogy. Imagine if I gave everyone in a room the exact same soup-making ingredients. Would everyone produce the same soup? Of course not. You would get hundreds of different varieties of soup, some magnificent and some terrible. It all depends on the skill of the chef. We are all made of the same fundamental ingredients, yet look how different we all are. You can take the ingredients of your life, your body, your mind, this powerful energy within you, and you can make something tremendous, something mediocre, or a serious problem. The choice is entirely up to you. The question isn't just about stopping. It's about transformation. Can this potent energy be channeled into something else? Absolutely. But are you competent to explore that? Do you have the necessary discipline, the sadhana, and the guidance to do it? That is the real question. For most of us, compulsively wasting this energy is the default setting. It's not a moral judgment, it's an observation of compulsion. When you decide to stop, your body and brain will certainly notice. It's not just a mental game. For a man, the sperm your body produces doesn't just sit around indefinitely. Most of the time, the body simply reabsorbs it, a quiet and efficient internal recycling process. But sometimes, your body takes matters into its own hands. This is where wet dreams come in. It's your body's natural release valve. A study in the Journal of Sexual Medicine found that men who go for a while without ejaculation are more likely to experience these nocturnal emissions. It's biology's way of saying, if you want to take care of this, I will. Your brain, which has become accustomed to a regular, high-intensity chemical cocktail, will also react. Masturbation provides a powerful hit of dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter. When you cut off that supply, your brain is going to notice, in both positive and negative ways. On the plus side, taking a break from this constant stimulation can lead to a significant boost in focus, motivation, and self-control. One study even found that after about a week of abstinence, men experienced a spike in testosterone levels, which can translate to a short-term boost in energy and confidence. This is that main character energy that people often report in the early stages. You feel more alive, more driven. But there is a flip side. Your brain might start to rebel. If you go too long without any form of release, you might experience increased stress, irritability, and a barrage of random sexual thoughts. A 2021 study found that people who actively avoided masturbation were more likely to have stronger and more frequent urges than those who didn't. It's as if the less you do it, the louder your brain starts to scream for its familiar reward. This is where most people fail. They experience the rebellion of the brain, the intense urges, and they believe they are weak. They believe they are destined to fail. But this is a predictable, biological response. Understanding this is the first step to overcoming it. It's not a sign of your personal failure, it's a sign that your brain is rewiring itself. This journey also has a profound impact on your relationships. Some people, proponents of semen retention, believe that abstaining helps them focus all of their sexual and emotional energy on their partner, leading to more intense intimacy and a deeper connection. While the hard science on this is still developing, countless men swear by this experience. However, it's also true that for many, masturbation can be a healthy tool for self-discovery. Research has shown that regular solo sessions can increase your self-awareness and help reduce performance anxiety. Essentially, getting to know your own body can make partnered sex a smoother, more enjoyable experience. The key difference, the one that destroyed my early experiences, is the addition of porn. Exploring your own body is one thing, conditioning your brain with hyper-unrealistic digital content is another thing entirely. The entire NoFap movement is built on the promise that quitting will turn you into a focused, disciplined, laser-eyed monk. They talk about mental clarity, motivation, and willpower. And for many, these benefits are real. They do feel more energized, more confident, and more in control. But the science is mixed. Some studies support the idea that it can improve focus, while others suggest that trying to actively suppress sexual thoughts can backfire, making you obsess over them even more. A 2016 study found that people who tried to suppress these thoughts ended up thinking about them with even greater intensity. It's the classic psychological phenomenon, don't think about a pink elephant. The bottom line is that self-control is a valuable skill, but you don't have to become a complete ascetic to build it. The real path forward isn't about suppression, it's about transcendence. And this brings me to the fundamental flaw in the entire NoFap movement, the reason I failed for years, the reason so many men are stuck in a cycle of relapse and shame. It's the concept of the streak. I find the whole movement, as it's popularly understood, to be corny. This idea of superpowers is misleading. You don't gain superpowers. You just stop being a dysfunctional version of yourself and return to being a normal, healthy human being. The reason it feels super is because you've been operating at such a deficit for so long. Your baseline has been destroyed by a habit that wrecks your motivation, your sexual energy, and your passion for life. The core problem is the streak. Counting the number of days since you last relapsed. I've done it. I've failed at it hundreds of times. And here's the problem with the streak, it defines you by your addiction. It reinforces the identity of someone who is trying not to do something. Let me ask you this. Assuming you are not an alcoholic, are you currently counting the number of days it's been since you last had a drink? Of course not. Because you don't identify as an alcoholic. The thought doesn't even cross your mind. If you are counting the days since you last fapped, it means you are constantly anticipating the day you will have to reset that counter. You are living in a state of waiting for your own failure. This is why NoFap is inherently flawed for long-term success. People become obsessed with their streak. I'm on day 3, I'm on day 5, I'm on day 90. They are living in anticipation of the fall. It creates a negative cycle of building up a little momentum, inevitably failing, and then starting over from the beginning, laden with guilt. The real solution, the only thing that creates permanent change, is a fundamental shift in your identity. You have to stop being a guy who is on NoFap and become a man who doesn't watch porn. The streak becomes irrelevant because you are playing for life. There is no counter to reset. This is just who you are now. This identity shift is only possible when you truly, deeply believe that this habit is not serving you, that it is actively preventing you from becoming the man you want to be. Your perspective on sex and yourself will change. For some, going without this crutch helps them feel more in control of their urges, like they've finally taken the driver's seat of their own mind. For others, it can initially feel like a part of their identity has been muted. A study in the Journal of Sex Research found that long-term abstinence, whether by choice or circumstance, can reshape how people experience intimacy. For some, it fosters a deeper appreciation for emotional connection over raw physical sensation. Ultimately, the impact depends entirely on why you choose to stop. If your decision is rooted in self-discipline, a desire for personal growth, or a spiritual path, it can be a profoundly positive and empowering experience. But if it's driven by shame, fear, or misinformation, it is more likely to lead to frustration and other negative emotions. There is no one-size-fits-all answer. What matters most is understanding your own body, your mind, and aligning your actions with your deepest values. So, how do we make this identity shift? How do we go from being a slave to a master? This is where we turn to the wisdom of the ancient Stoics. Stoicism has taught me one of the most powerful tools for overcoming this addiction, the art of objective analysis. It teaches you to look at things as they are, without the emotional story you attach to them. Let's look at this act objectively. What is actually happening? Pornography is just a collection of pixels on a screen, arranged to mimic a human act. The physical act itself is simply encasing a part of your body with your hand and moving it back and forth. The result is a brief, fleeting spasm of pleasure, which is immediately followed by a wave of guilt and shame. When you strip away the fantasy, the emotional charge, and the years of conditioning, you see it for what it is, a pointless, empty act. There is no real benefit, only a momentary escape that costs you your power, your presence, and your self-respect. I know that me just telling you to grow up and stop doing it isn't enough. You've probably watched 100 videos like this. So what can you actually, practically do? First, you have to become a detective of your own mind. You must identify why and how you end up in that situation. You need to understand that your brain is an incredibly intelligent and deceptive machine. It will trick you into getting what it wants, its familiar dopamine hit. Think about the typical cycle. Does this sound familiar? You pick up your phone. You tell yourself, I'm just going to scroll on Instagram for a minute. But you know, deep down, you're looking for a certain type of content. You go to the Explore page. Oh, there's a model. I didn't expect that. Let me just click on her profile, just to see. The algorithm, which is designed to keep you hooked, starts suggesting more and more similar content. From there, maybe you graduate to a more explicit site like Reddit. And 30 minutes later, the act is done, you're filled with shame, you're resetting your mental counter, and the cycle of self-hatred continues. You have to be ruthless. You have to nip it in the bud. The moment the thought of peeking enters your mind, you must recognize it as a lie. Your brain will tell you, I'm just going to look. I'm not going to go through with the full act. How many times has that ever worked? For me, the number of times I peeked and it didn't end in a full relapse is 0. Peeking does not exist. Peeking is the first step of the relapse. Therefore, you must raise your standards for yourself. You have to be stricter. Don't even allow yourself to peek. And how do you do that? You have to cut off the supply chain. Get off the social media sites that act as the gateway drug. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, most people think they're innocent. But their algorithms are specifically designed to feed you what you crave. If you have a weakness for half-naked models, they will feed you an endless buffet of that content, leading you straight down the rabbit hole to relapse. Reduce your time on these platforms, or eliminate them completely. Understand that your brain is luring you onto them with the hope that you will accidentally stumble across trigger content. But we must go even deeper. How do you stop yourself from even accessing these triggers in the first place? The answer is simple, but not easy. You have to get busy. You have to fill your day with meaningful activity. Create a routine. If I look back, 90% of the times I relapsed, I was in the same environment, alone in my room. In that situation, the friction between me and the act was almost 0. My phone was right there. No one was watching. My willpower was at its lowest. Compare that to being in a public place, like a restaurant or a library. The friction is incredibly high. You're not going to do it there because people are around, you would be judged. You need to artificially create that friction in your own life. You must change your environment. Spend less time locked away in your room. Go to the gym. Do your work in a coffee shop. Meet up with friends. Do absolutely anything other than being stuck in the same room where you have failed 1,000 times before. I know it's not always possible to avoid your room. So, if you must be there, increase the friction. Leave your bedroom door open, so family members can walk by. Do whatever it takes to increase the resistance between you and the act. If it is easy to access, you will always be tempted to do it. And let me be crystal clear about something, the urges will never completely go away. As a man, you are wired with sexual energy and desire. It is a fundamental part of your biology. The urge will always be there. It will not get easier in the sense that the urge disappears. What changes is you. You become stronger. You realize that it is your responsibility to conquer the urge, to learn how to resist it, to transmute that energy into something productive. People will give you quick fix advice. When you get an urge, do 10 push-ups. Jump in a cold shower. Go for a run. And these things can help. But I want to be practical. I understand that once the urge takes hold, once that desire is fully activated, your judgment becomes clouded. There is often nothing you can say to your brain to convince it to go for a walk instead. When you want to do it right now, and you are fully locked in. I remember walking home from school, having already made the decision that I was going to relapse when I got home, and there was absolutely nothing I could have said to myself to change my mind. The only tool that truly works at that critical moment is mindfulness. The main thing that will help you, and you might not like this answer, is meditation. Meditation is the practice of observing your thoughts without being controlled by them. It trains you to take a step back from the storm of emotion and desire and simply watch it. When the urge arises, instead of being immediately swept away by it, meditation gives you a precious few seconds of space. In that space, you can ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? Is this temporary spasm of pleasure really worth the guilt, the shame, and the pain that will follow? Is it worth resetting my commitment to becoming a better man? The answer is always, unequivocally, no. It is never worth it. So, the path is clear. You must shift your identity. You are no longer trying to not watch porn. You simply don't watch porn. You are a man who doesn't do that. This has to be the first and last NoFap video you ever need to watch. Why? Because there's a final, insidious trap you need to avoid. It's a term called mental masturbation. This is what happens when you get stuck constantly consuming content about the thing you're trying to fix, instead of actually fixing it. You watch endless videos about NoFap, about the timeline, about the superpowers, about what you can expect. This is mental masturbation. It gives you a little dopamine hit, it makes you feel like you're being productive, but you're not actually doing anything. How about instead of watching a video about the NoFap timeline, you actually go out and experience the timeline for yourself? Stop watching videos like this. It's childish. It's time to enter the next phase of your life. A phase where your identity is that of a man who no longer even thinks about NoFap because he no longer watches porn. A man who is focused on improving himself so he can attract a partner in real life. A man who is not embarrassed or ashamed of the things he does when he is alone. You no longer want to identify as that person, the one hiding in the shadows. I was that person. I am no longer that person. And it feels incredible. Do I still get urges? Yes, now and then. But as you become more mindful, more mature, more masculine, you realize you just don't need that childish, unnecessary crutch in your life anymore. This is it. You signed a contract with the devil all those years ago. Today is the day you rip up that contract. It's time to enter a new phase of your life. A phase of growth, of maturity, of self-improvement. A phase of becoming a man. You are no longer a little boy. Stop being a slave to your sexual desires. It is time to take control of your life. Get off the forums, forget about the streaks and the superpowers. Let's cure this addiction, once and for all, by deciding that we are cured. Your new life begins now. Your identity is forged in this moment of decision. The old you is gone. The new you, the man in control, the man of purpose, the man with a Stoic core, begins his work. And his work is to build a life of meaning, not to chase fleeting moments of empty pleasure. Take that potent energy, that virya, and use it to build your empire.